Welcome to my channel. I'm Sacha. I'm a television journalist originally from the UK, and now I'm working on the news in Australia.
Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you for clicking on this video. Now, this video is going to talk about how journalists conduct interviews. It is, of course, the bread and butter of what we do. Our currency is information, and often we get information from doing interviews. So, how do you do a good one? Interview a range of people, from victims of assaults to people who have just grown the biggest pumpkin known to man. And of course, treating those people comes with delicacy depending on the situation that you're in. You should be nice to everyone, of course, but a lot of this is dependent on the context of the situation and who you're interviewing. So just think about that when I talk about these next few pointers for you. Number one, put people at ease before the interview. Have a bit of chit chat, see if you can make them feel a little bit relaxed. Often you can find out some really interesting information before an interview, which can really help you in the interview itself. So you can glean a bit of information. For example, recently I spoke to a woman who was assaulted during a robbery, and we were talking to her just before we actually started rolling. She told us some information that prompted some of the questions that I asked her during the interview, because I was more informed, and therefore the grabs that we got within the interview itself were actually stronger than they would have been had I just gone in and not spoken to her beforehand. This is particularly important where you turn up to a scene and you don't really know what has happened. Number two, direct people. Tell them where to look, tell them where to stand, tell them they need to look at you, tell them, look, we're live, so please don't swear, or we're not live, so we can edit and take out the best bits. So don't be afraid to direct people, because ultimately it will make your interview better at the end of the day, and that's exactly what you want. Number three, ask for their name and title, and don't forget to ask them to spell their name, of course. I have done another video talking about tips, things like this. It's called Tips for Journalists, so definitely click on that. I'll share it in the link below. Definitely make sure you ask for the name and title of the person, because you need that information when you're sat down and going over an interview later on. I would suggest easing in. Ask the basic questions first. Make sure you have the why are we here today, who, what, when, where, why, how, and then you can gather momentum and go further into the interview process. And often at that point people are even further at ease, and therefore you're probably going to get better grabs from them as a result of that. You need to know what has happened, why it matters to people, what are the basic developments. Make sure you cover all of these questions, because it is so important for you as a journalist to have this understanding, so that when you go back and you edit this, you're not like, oh, I wonder what time they were broken into, or how many people there were. You need to know this information, so just make sure you clarify it, and it doesn't make you seem stupid, it just makes you seem stupid if you don't know the information. Go in prepared. Never go into a room if you're unarmed with the latest information. Obviously, if you're going to a break and enter, you may not know what's happened, but if you're going to interview a sports person, a politician, you know, anyone really, if you can prepare and do as much research before you go in as possible, that will put you in a stronger position to ask questions, to be informed. Sometimes, for example, you will have documents you need to read, get a highlighter, sit down and go over it, ask questions, write questions as you're going over the document. You really have to go in prepared, because if you turn up to an interview and it doesn't look like you know what you're on about, you're not going to build a good relationship with that person. They may not want to do interviews with you in future, because it will feel like you are wasting their time. So go and have as much information as you possibly can. Check the local trends on that topic on the day. If you're going to talk to a football club, has something dramatic happened recently in football? Have they suddenly said, okay, we're banning headers because it's causing concussion? What's happening with it? So make sure you go in armed with the latest information. Even if your interview isn't planned to be on that topic, you would kick yourself if you go in and don't then ask about something that's current and happening and breaking while you have that person in the room with you. At the end of an interview, say to someone, do you have anything else to add? This is one of the best things that I do as a journalist, because I guarantee you at the end of most interviews people go, no. and then they proceed to tell me something extremely important, and often that is the exact snippet of the interview that I will use, because it gives me sometimes the best information. Sometimes it's a question that I haven't thought of asking, but to them it's important information and they'll share it with you. So at the end of an interview, definitely make sure you ask someone, do you have anything else to add? Anything else you'd like to touch on? Have we missed anything really important that you would like to share? Don't be afraid to ask that, because it could save your butt. Let the conversation lead you. Don't be too stringent, be led by what the person is saying. Often this is when you get the best information anyway, because someone may go off on a tangent, at which point sometimes you need to control them if they're talking about, you know, the Olympics back in 1980, if it's irrelevant to the topic that you're talking about. Or if Jim is talking about his largest ever pumpkin and you're talking to him about rain, about something entirely unrelated. Sometimes you do have to put people on the straight and narrow, but sometimes you will just get that extra bit of information by allowing the conversation to flow, than by cutting in and interrupting someone and saying, no, we need to talk about this because my 5th question that I noted down was to ask you what your policy means about blah blah. No, sometimes let a conversation go on. It can be different with politicians though, so beware of the pollies. This is a weird one, but don't ask too many or too few questions. So you don't want to come away from an interview and not know what you're talking about because you've not asked enough questions. And remember, a lot of the information that someone tells you in an interview, you will not actually use that from them, you will use that in your voiceover sometimes. So you need to have the information to be able to write a script. So when I say don't ask too few questions, I mean don't ask too few questions so that you cannot write an entire story on it if that's your intention with the interview. So remember, ask for important statistics. Do you have any more information? How many people are here today? Is that more than last year? Is there an increase? Have the conditions changed? What are the conditions like? You know, ask all of these questions. Don't be afraid, because this is this person's topic, so they should technically be able to answer those questions. But also don't ask too many questions where you're going to go back. Say you're doing a news story for television news, your story's probably going to be between 1 minute 30 and maybe 3 minutes long, and you have a 40-minute interview to edit down into that time, because you in many respects are making so much more work for yourself. In TV news, we're on tight deadlines every day, 6 o'clock, get it into the bulletin, right? You have a finite amount of time to edit, sit back and look at this. So if you're in an interview and you're thinking, I'm just going to ask these questions for the sake of it, not because you're going to use them, maybe don't do that. Save yourself the heartache later on. Obviously, if the person hasn't got to the point that you're talking about yet, then yes, do carry on and ask them questions. But just think, you will have to go back, watch this and edit it later. So you need to be protective of your own time. If you have all of the information you need and you're sure about that, then it's okay to end an interview there. If someone's doing a bad interview, give them a second to breathe, put them at ease, try and make them laugh by making a cringy joke like I try and do all the time. That will inevitably make them laugh. And just remind people, if you're not live, look, we're not live, it's okay, we've got time. Don't stress, it's fine. And also, if someone is just giving you monosyllabic answers, different for children obviously, but just say to them, look, what I need you to do is to put my question into your answer. So if I say to you, how many swimmers are there today? And they go, 16, you can't use that. You need to say to them, please just put my question into your answer. So just say, there's 16 swimmers here today, it's more than we had last year, blah, blah, blah. You know, get them to put it in so that you can actually use that as a grab rather than just quoting those numbers. Unless, of course, you know you're going to use those numbers in a bit of VO, in which case 16 is fine. Be firm without being mean. I really don't believe that you get anywhere by being mean, but you can hold people to account without being mean by being firm. So if you're speaking to politicians or the leader of an organisation or someone where something has gone wrong and you are the voice of the people, you need to ask these hard questions. So you can do that. You don't have to be mean about it, but just make sure you're firm. What are you planning on doing to help people in future? Local people are starving. What are you going to do to stop that from happening? And we talk about these policies, but when are actions going to speak louder than words? Ask these questions. It's your job as a journalist to do it, so don't be afraid to do it. You are entitled to do that. Be present. Pay attention. During an interview, make sure you're paying attention. If you're thinking about your next question while the person's talking, you could have missed something very important that they are saying. You'll go back and you'll be like, damn it, I asked them that 4 times, but I forgot that they talked about it because I wasn't listening. Focus, because during an interview you need to know whether you've got the content that you need, and the only way you're going to do that is by really being present. So during an interview I'm fully focused on that person the majority of the time. There are of course situations where I'm really uncomfortable and I maybe don't know a topic as well as I should, and I am thinking about the next question, but it doesn't really help you. Just try and be there and think about what they're talking about, because remember, this is a conversation, so you need to snowball off what they're saying, etc, etc. And you need to know once you come away what grab you're going to use. Often after an interview I'll write a piece to camera or I'll write the script before we get back into the office, which means I need to know exactly which grab I'm going to use, and I think to myself, okay, I'm using the section where they said X amount of people blah blah blah. Like, you need to know that, just be on it, because you have got these tight deadlines. So if you need to go immediately and record a piece to camera, then at least you know what's coming after it or before it, so that you can write a script that flows more effectively. Good body language, of course. Look at the person in the eye. Don't just like be bored while they're talking, like, oh, this is the most boring thing ever. Can you imagine if you did that in an interview? Like, the person would just be so mad. I'd be mad if someone did that to me. So yeah, good body language, look at them, smile, be really encouraging, just have that good body language, make sure you're present, you know, hold the microphone nice and tight so you get the good audio, not too tight so it's in shot, because that is annoying. There was an interview that I did actually where I had hiccups throughout the entire thing and it was hilarious, and the guy was doing so well, he wasn't laughing, and I was like, I was literally like that throughout the entire interview. He did a great job. This is off an entirely different tangent on how to do a good interview, but anyway, I thought it was funny. Be on time. Do not piss people off, okay? Try and be on time, if not be early. Set up, be ready for them. A lot of people are taking time out of their day. They're doing you a favour a lot of the time. Try your absolute best to be on time. Sometimes things happen. That's okay. If you've got a track record of being on time most of the time, people will appreciate that and they will respect you for it. And if you say to them, it's going to be a 30-second interview, stick to that, because otherwise in future they will not do an interview with you. Break up questions. This is so important. Don't go, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this scheme? No. This gives someone an opportunity to forget to answer one of those questions. You ask them, what are the advantages of this situation? Cool. What are the disadvantages of this situation? What are your hopes for the future? Break up questions, because therefore you know you're going to get the proper grab. People will forget because they're probably trying to think of so many things during an interview. So break up questions. It will seriously help you, it will help them, it will be better for everyone, which is what we want. Try and avoid giving questions beforehand. I did this recently because I was covering a really tragic story and I wouldn't have got the people to talk to me otherwise, and in many ways it backfired because I had 4 interviewees who had all prepared the exact same answer and had basically scripted it. It came out okay in the end because I pushed one of the other interviewees and she was the most comfortable in front of the camera, and she ended up giving me the best grabs and a really good interview, and the others were so nervous, and it was about an incredibly tragic topic. So I completely understand, but honestly, if you can avoid giving someone questions, do avoid it, because people will come in scripted, they'll come in over prepared, they'll be afraid they haven't stuck to a script, and the flow of the interview just won't be there. If you need to give someone questions to convince them to do an interview, fair enough, sometimes it's what you've got to do, but most people, most news companies preference not giving those questions beforehand, because you want someone's natural response. You want to have on camera what it is that they're going to say without it being rote, rehearsed and just incredibly boring, frankly. If I've got any journalist friends out there watching this, any more tips that you might want to give people? I'd be interested to know if I've missed anything off the list, because I do go back to my videos and sometimes think, damn it, there's other things that I could have put in there. Thank you so much for watching, and of course I know I have a lot of people watching in the UK, so I hope that you're all safe, well, happy and as healthy as you can be during this incredibly weird, crazy time in the world. So sending lots of love. Look at me, I'm on a roll. See ya.